Divine Source, Great Spirit, north, south, east, west, earth, sky, above, below, within, without, we anchor this space sacred in service to love, in service to truth, and in service to the highest good of all. We call upon you this day to make yourself known to us in all the ways that you already are present in us and through us. Help us to feel you in our hearts, in our minds, in this communication and in this communion with each other and with you. We ask that you guide our words, our thoughts, show us how to be in service at the next level through this journeying we're doing today. We call on you in gratitude and love, in honor and respect. We call on all of our helpers to be here, speaking with us, through us, for those that would be helped, to give us the messages that are most right for those who will come to hear this. If it becomes a recording out in the world, we ask you to be present in our minds and in our hearts, to be messengers, to be helpful in a way that's truly helpful. We thank you for this day. We thank you for this invitation. It seemed like I invited us to this, but we know it's your invitation. And so we're so glad for it, and we thank you, and we ask that you guide us in everything we do. Amen.
Thank you.
Greetings. Welcome. We're calling this Talking Spirit. My name's Elizabeth, and I'm here with my good soul sister friend.
Hi, I'm Jutta.
So we just felt an inspiration come through to connect in this way. We don't really know what's going to happen here, but we are just answering what feels like inner inspiration to share our love of truth, our love of the divine, and in order to answer that deep, deep call that we have in our hearts to know ourselves truly, to know ourselves as the divine light. And so we have called this Talking Spirit because Jutta and I met or seem to have connected in this life by virtue of our deep interest in the divine and in serving our purpose. And so we just felt that to start communicating this way, she's seemingly in Germany and I'm seemingly in the United States. And we've had some fun over the last couple of years connecting. And we just wanted to see what else might be fun for us as we learn how to listen more deeply to the spirit, as we learn how to be more in the communication channel, as we learn how to be agents of grace that we're all here to be. So we're just practicing, we're just playing, we're just having fun. We're asking for our hearts to be lit up and our minds to be lit up, and to share that with anyone that is to come here and participate in it. So again, we don't really know what this is about other than seemingly answering our own call for some joy and for clarity and for being in service to our fellows. I know for myself that when people share their spiritual journeys with me, it lights me up like nothing else. It really just touches my heart so deeply. And so I know what a value it's been to me to have people share their light with me, to share their wisdom, and to talk about specifically their spiritual journeys. So that was kind of a starting point for this idea of Talking Spirit. And for this idea of episode 1, we thought we would just maybe introduce ourselves and just see what came up, see if we had fun doing it, because if we don't have fun doing it, we're not going to keep up with it. And to see if any of you would resonate with it. See if there was an answer to some of your prayers and some of your heart's longings. So, yeah, we just sort of felt like maybe, even though none of us have spiritual biographies, it's such a funny idea to try to talk about our spiritual lives because it's really indescribable. But it seems like we've been taken on these journeys with the Spirit to be divested of the world's thinking and to be given an opportunity to see things from a different vantage point, to have a perceptual shift in our hearts and our minds. And so that seems to be how we got connected in this life. And so, yeah, that's again the platform. And we might just speak a little today about how we seem to have gotten here, how did we get here? How did we get here? And this idea of bodies is, of course, the huge, big conundrum and question. But how did we seem to get here, Jutta and I, for this conversation today? And I know it's by grace, and I know it's by divine order, you might say, that we're having this conversation. There's nothing that we do that is by accident, and there's nothing that we do that is not given by the Spirit. But getting to that realization within myself seems to have been a journey. So, what do you have to say, my friend?
Well, I think first off, I feel just to say I'm grateful for the invitation for just exploring this sort of format. And yeah, as an introduction, just to share where we've kind of come from is fun because everybody has such a different story. And actually, it's funny that you say we don't really have a spiritual biography, but I last year I did feel the inspiration and guidance to write about my life. So I've kind of like talked about all the different stages of my life, at least on a blog last year, and it was a really fun experience to look back and see how it was really all orchestrated for me and for the greatest healing, and I couldn't really have done any of it myself by choice in a way. It looked like I was born in Germany, in the eastern part of Germany, and I never really had a strong connection to this place here or the history of it. And there was always a draw to the United States that I really couldn't explain. But I don't know, it just all really ended up working out super easily that I moved to the States, and that whole move pushed me to do some major growing up, which I'm still growing up. but you know, I was living on my own, well, with my husband at the time, and it gave me a really good opportunity just to look at the world, which I hadn't really done before that point. And it made me see a lot of things I didn't like and pushed me really inward. And that's how I got deeply onto this journey. And it came along with A Course in Miracles, which is something we seem to have in common. Yeah, and it's just been a really big journey of deeper and deeper joining with the Spirit and being open to what that's supposed to look like. And now it seems to look like an invitation from you to this. So, I mean, there's so much in between, obviously, and we can see how much we want to talk about. But yeah.
Yeah, so it seemed that we got connected through someone that showed up in my mind, seemingly via a search in YouTube. I was at the point in my life where I had been shown by Spirit for a couple of years that my father was going to drop the body, as is said by some. And I had been having visions of him in dreams with my grandmother, who had already passed and was his mother. An airplane coming in over a hangar, and my grandmother looking at me with this kind of like, ooh, this is going to be interesting. And my dad was a pilot. And every time before the plane would land in my dreams, I would wake up with a start. But I've been being told by Spirit in my daily writings that he was going to go. I had like 2 years of hearing that, and to make sure everything was clean, to make sure I had the opportunity to wrap things up with him. And so sure enough, my father died after landing his little airplane on the runway. As he was taxiing towards the hangar, he had a heart attack. And he actually died twice in the airplane and ended up coming back to life. And as a child, I was shown that my dad would have a heart attack and die in an airplane when I was about 5 or 6 years old. So it took many years between that first vision and when that happened, and that then kicked off an opportunity for me to go and stay with my dad at the end of his life and be sort of his caretaker companion so he could be in his home. And it was intense. You and I were talking earlier about intensity, and people wrapping up their lives at the end is intense. And my father was very self driven and focused, and a big light and a bright mind, and very much in command of his world. And so to be stripped of that was not easy for him. And so I found myself at my father's home out in the country in the middle of many a snowstorm that winter. I think it snowed practically every day and big, deep snows. And so we were kind of housebound, and we had a great container for healing, deep, deep healing. And, um, and I found myself one day just so miserable. I was so miserable with him because of all the healing that was coming up. And it was so intense that I really needed a different reflection in my mind. So I found David Hoffmeister, who is someone who's a teacher of the Course in Miracles, which was something that had come to me when I was about 25 years old, 26 years old. I'm now 50 something. And he just had a message that day when I was really desperate for dealing with my mind. And then I looked online to see more about him, and he was actually giving a retreat. There are no accidents. He was actually doing like a 2-day talk in a little town in upstate New York. And it was like a week or 2 or 3 from whenever I first found him. So I got to go to hear him speak with a small group, probably about 10 or 12 of us. And he and Ricky Como were there from New York City. They had been in New York City for some sort of conference, and then they came out to where I was, to some retreat center, and they did a talk one day and maybe a movie the next, kind of a thing. And I was so grateful. I was so grateful to have had a chance to shift my focus because I was having so much stuff come up, and it was very painful. So that was in 2015, I think, because my dad died in 2015. I think it was that winter that he passed when I met David. So it was like in January of 2015 or something like that. And then my dad died in July. So that's seemingly how I got into the vortex of yours, where I found you, Yuta. And I don't consider myself a Course in Miracles student. I've actually heard spirit and guidance since I was a baby. But when I found David, I had the Course in my mind and spirit in my mind in a way that you might call Course language. But it's really the one universal story of awakening from a certain perspective. And so it was just this bright light that came into my mind at a time when things were really heavy and hard. And then, yeah, it's just been kind of the journey of bouncing in and out for a little bit, of listening to some of his talks and doing some online stuff just to kind of keep my mind moving in the direction it's been moving all along, which is back to the light. So anyway, that's how you and I got connected, seemingly. And I just had a guidance come in, to reach out to you. And I think that it was maybe you had been in that spiritual community. For those of you that don't know Yuta, she had been in that community serving spirit in that context and learning about her own mind and doing her own healing work, her own personal healing, and learning how to be a vessel for spirit. If I'm not speaking out of turn to tell people what you did there, but just as a context, you can speak more about it. But yeah, I think I was guided to reach out to you. Maybe at the time you were about to leave community after a number of years, you'll tell the story. And then I think you said no at that time and went off to journey with spirit on your own to maybe Alaska. So you can tell us that story. So I'm going to be quiet now if I can. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, um, A Course in Miracles, yeah, that kind of came to my life. Um, obviously in a different way, because I was on this search. Like I was really be- kind of before A Course in Miracles came in. I was really deep and heavy into conspiracies. Like I said earlier, like I was kind of finding out things about the world that pushed me into the direction of spirit. But I was finding out about the, dark corners that you don't normally see as you're living your normal life. And it made me really scared and depressed. And at the same time, I was kind of building this new group of friends, and one of them ended up telling me about A Course in Miracles. And around that same time, I was exploring other things too. Like I had explored Buddhism and Taoism, and like New Age spirituality stuff, like channelings and angels and Pleiadians and those kind of things, and none of it really gave me any power. Like I felt like I was still kind of just at the mercy of everything that wasn't something I could grasp. Like the world was deciding over my fate, so to speak, and I felt really like powerless in that. And when I was given, or when I was introduced to A Course in Miracles, that whole problem sort of was solved, at least intellectually. Not in experience yet, but it felt like, okay, this is the direction that I'm supposed to go now, because this is the only thing that makes sense. Like A Course in Miracles, what it teaches, that I there's a power I have over my own mind that doesn't depend on what happens in the world. That really spoke to me, and that's how I ended up. Also, at the same time, this person introduced me to A Course in Miracles. They introduced me to David Hoffmeister right away. So I never, I never listened to any other teachers of A Course in Miracles, and yeah, ended up joining that community. It felt really given, because it was almost like everything else in my life was running out. Like my inspiration for it was running out. Like my relationships were ending at the time, and I had been working in like my first career, so to speak, for about a year, and I felt complete with it already, surprisingly. And my lease in my apartment was running out. I had owned a car, but then that sort of just went away too, due to a small accident I had. And so it was like I was just kind of wrapping up with that part of my life, and then it felt really, it was just all very easy to move into the next step, which was I ended up joining Living Miracles community. And yeah, and then that was a journey of about 7 years, 6.5, 7 years. And then yeah, I think towards the end of that, you kind of always seem to know ahead of time what, or like hearing things as possibilities for the moment, but I don't know, they didn't, like you said, they didn't happen at that time, but you did give me that invitation. But when I was leaving the community, felt immediately drawn to the West Coast. I had never been there. That felt really inspiring. So I did a little journeying around the West Coast, and then ended up in Alaska and North Carolina, well, California, Oregon, Alaska, then North Carolina and Nevada, and then I came to you. And I don't remember how long I stayed there, but it was actually around this time last year.
Yeah, you came in, you were here for Thanksgiving. So November, December, January. I think you left in February. So almost 4 months, maybe. 3 months,
Right.
pretty much, I think. And then maybe a little into the fourth month. Yeah, it was great. That was really, it was a weird time for both of us, but I knew Spirit was giving you a platform for some ease and some comfort. Yuta and I have both stepped out of the world. I seem to have done it when I was guided. Back I had a career. I had been in buying and planning for Bloomingdale's and Macy's in Manhattan, and was finally making money. And I went off on a yoga retreat to an ashram and did like a 10-day fast. And when I came back, that first day back to my job, as I was breaking my fast, I heard that it was time to leave my job. And within 2 weeks, I was gone from my job and was living in spiritual community. And I think I was maybe 30 years old or something at that point. I don't really remember, but I only was there for about a year living in community. But it was an intensive journey inward for sure. But both of us have really been in our journey. If there is any kind of spiritual biography, it's to say that we've been guided to learn how to listen to the spirit rather than to listen to the world, that we've been trained or in training to learn how to see what's ours, see what's in our mind, hand it over to the divine, and to get out of the way. Ultimately, the spiritual path, in my way of seeing it, you can give me yours, but is to divest us of the world, the thinking of the world, so that we can be a hollow reed, that we can be a channel for grace, that we can be a messenger for the divine. The divine has to have hands on the ground, hands, and feet on the ground kind of a thing. So, if we're stuck in the world's thinking and the personality and the ego and the me, my, I, there's no room for spirit. So the two of us, and probably many of you that are going to listen, we've been learning how to keep our attention on spirit, keep our attention on our inner world and our intuition, listening to the intuition, which in this world is it's a pretty tall order because there's a lot of distractions, a lot of drama and trauma, a lot that would try to keep you spun out and fixated on the screen out there. It's all about everybody else instead of it's about your own mind, as Yuta was saying. It's such a deep realization, and it's such a relief to know that I'm not at the mercy of the world either, that I'm at the mercy of my own mind and my own seeming choice about where I direct my mind. And the only thing that's felt good to me is to be directing it to the light and to spirit. So anyway, it was fun when you came here, and now we seem to be in conversation about you coming back here. But that time last year, which seems like eons ago, it just felt
Yes.
like you were to just be given an opportunity to land someplace fairly soft, and to know that you had comfort with food and a bathtub and hot tea and some movies and some conversation about spiritual matters. And I was
Yeah, in the middle of winter, which was so nice because
yeah.
the image in my head is just like a hearth.
Yeah, we were tucked
you know,
in. The spirit really tucked us in nicely, didn't it? And
yeah.
yeah, it was very sweet. And but we were both working stuff out, which is the case, right? We're always
Mm.
seemingly, while we're in a body, we're either working something out or we're learning how to be more available to spirit. It's just those two things, potentially, unless we're out there trying to project ourselves out into the world to be somebody in the world. But that's not how we're doing it. So it was a great container for us to get to know each other. And at the time, I remember saying, maybe there's more for us to do, some collaboration. That was kind of at the end of our time together. And then off you went. It was like one day you were here, and then one day I was like, you might consider, like, it felt like you were going to be invited to something, and then someone showed up and invited you. And it was like a couple of days you were gone. It was so seamless and effortless, right? It was so funny.
Yeah.
And then you showed up again. Then you were off my radar for almost a year, right? And then about a month ago, I was like, I don't know how we got reconnected, but you were kind of
Well,
showing up in my mind here. How did we connect again?
exactly. Well, I had already been thinking, yeah, you said like I'm in Germany right now. I'm staying with my parents, and I have this 6 month time frame in my mind, and this is now like I'm around month 5.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that I can stay in Germany, and I have this whole green card situation in America where I'm not ready to let go of that symbol, but there can be uh, problems if I stay out of the United States longer than 6 months. So I'm kind of approaching that time frame and thinking, okay, what's next? Where do I go? Because I don't have any sort of stable, let's say, place that I call my own, where I can just go, in the
Yeah.
United States. So of course I'm in prayer. Where should I go? Like, where would you have me go? Is there an invitation? Do I put out a post on Facebook to see if anybody would like me to stay with them, or just any kind of opening back into the United States? And I had already reached out to some people, and I never actually heard back from them. And I just, I was just in a place of openness and seeing what I was to do next. And then you wrote to me, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, of course. I shouldn't
Yeah.
even be surprised.
Yeah, the spirit had planted that possibility at the end of our time together last year, and I'm just now remembering because I don't hold on to a lot of the details anymore. But I know I shared with you last year you were a smoker, and so you were staying in a room that's where my
Oh
altar
yeah.
is, and I started smelling cigarette smoke really strongly in that room, and there were just these little things that were floating through the ethers here in my house, and yeah, and I hadn't been on Facebook, so I had no idea where you were. And, I just was really unplugged from really pretty much everyone and everything. So I'd been in my little cocoon enjoying my quiet time with spirit and doing stuff. But yeah, so you just came back online. And then when I heard, yeah, what was going on, I think I even invited you. I think I even said, there's a place here for you if you require it. And, the
Mm-hmm.
spirit is so gracious and effortless. That's the thing that, like, the programming of my life growing up and seeming reflections for my mind growing up, they did not show me that life could be easy and effortless. There was
Mm.
a lot of struggling and striving and drama and trauma, and so, but I knew that didn't make sense to me growing up. And I am just now seeing, when I was about 2 years old, maybe 2 to 3 years old, we lived in a place called Ambler, Pennsylvania. And I remember my family had some little party get together, and I remember standing outside. They were saying goodbye to the people that had come, and my dog Alex, a Springer Spaniel, he was standing next to me. And I remember looking around thinking, you people don't know what you're talking about, do you? And I said, come on, Alex. And we went and we left. And I was going to run away. And we ran away to the big apartment complex up the hill, like the dog knew to cover my back. But off we went because I kind of looked around and I thought, these guys don't really know how to get me where I need to go. And I was playing the little runaway for a long time, actually. But yeah, there were not reflections for me that the spirit was in charge, and there were not reflections for me that things could be pretty effortless and synchronicity was normal, and being guided
Mm.
or hearing messages from the spirit. I got no reflection back that was acceptable. I actually got reflections back that I was maybe crazy, and oh, it's her talking to her imaginary friends. No, I was hearing from spirit. And so it is what it is. It's all fine and good, but yeah, I love that we get to see seeming witnesses outside of ourselves be taken care of. I got to see how the spirit was taking care of you. Whether you wanted to take the invitation or not didn't really matter, but it was just a nice confirmation for me that I was hearing guidance properly, that the reason to reach out was for you to know you had someplace safe to land when you came back. And so we don't know what's going to happen, but you might come here. We are coming here, we think, God willing, and you'll stay until you don't. And
Yeah.
that's kind of a nice place to be, where you're just in your divine alignment, and anything can happen. And when it does, it's usually pretty good if you're in alignment. So that's yeah, it seems to be where we're at, right? Kind of catching up with what's what here.
Yeah. And and even though we've spent time together already, like you said, it feels like eons ago. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know who you were then. I don't know who I was then
Yeah.
anymore.
No,
And
totally new.
so
Yeah.
the whole thing is really new, and it's been feeling really fresh,
Yeah.
actually.
Yes.
And
Hallelujah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I'm so grateful that so much of the old has been released out of my mind, that it really does feel like a new day. And it is often very difficult to source from the past. This world is sourcing from the past most of the time, or projecting into the future. And it's crazy making. And it never made sense to me. It just did not make
Mm,
sense as a kid. I saw a lot of busy doing and a lot of running around and a lot of stress. And of course, as a child, you don't know the world's stuff. But I remember we had a sunroom in my house growing up, and it was like built in bricks, like benches, window seat kind of things. And so they would get really hot in the sun when the sun was out. And I could have laid there for eternity, just soaking in that light, right? In the warmth of the spirit. I mean, that's really what it was for me. And, I just I didn't know that that was an inner state of being that I was really tapping into. I thought it was like, a
mm,
little kid lying on a sun bench, right? But I actually was being shown what is our true nature, really, right? And
mm,
um, and it's so delightful to be more in that than in the, oh, I got to go get a job and make my way in the world and make it happen, Cap'n. That's an exhausting way to go. And yet stepping off the ledge, living lives that we've been guided to live, it's not easy. you know and we've talked a lot through our journey of the challenge of standing up to those voices of the world that would say, you're screwed, you don't have a house, you don't have a place, you don't have a full-time job or health insurance or whatever, right? I
mm,
mean, to say no to the world and to listen with spirit, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a
mm,
lot of courage. And thank God we have people that show up along the way to say, oh, I'm doing the same thing. And I get how hard it can feel sometimes. So
yeah.
I'm grateful for you, very grateful for you that we've been able to share this
Yeah.
journey
I'm grateful
together.
too. And when you were talking about the bathing in the sun on the bricks,
Yeah.
I've had something in some ways, like, I think I'm discovering just how seemingly opposite we are,
Uh-huh.
but the same too. Like, even just our sleeping patterns, it's like complete opposite. But you lying in the sun and me, I have so many memories of sitting on the windowsill in the middle of the night, just enjoying the quiet. And, like,
Mm,
in a way, it feels like very much that same
yeah.
space. Like, that nighttime for me was always like, oh, okay, I can just rest and just relax now. Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
it's so funny how the symbol is this complete seemingly opposite.
Yeah, it's a funny, it's sweet now to be more within myself in the place of not having really comparisons, which you're not doing, of course, but just sort of it brings to mind
Yeah,
that idea of, how easy it is to get into judgment about one way or the other is good, or comparing ourselves to others and all that. And seeing more and more that it's same, but it just looks slightly different. And as you were
yeah,
talking about it, as a kid, I couldn't wait for nighttime, because for me that meant that the world was going to slow down and the craziness and the busy doings were going to come to an end. So I too loved
mm,
nighttime, and kind of couldn't wait for it in a way. And I was also remembering the house that I grew up in most of my childhood. There was a long hall from like where my sisters and I had our bedrooms and my dad's bedroom. And along the hall, looking out into the backyard, were a couple of windowsills that were kind of deep, that whoever built the house had put like a little thin marble into it. And so in the summertime, even if it was hot, the marble was usually cool. And sometimes at night, I'd walk down to say goodnight to my dad, and just that sense of the dark but maybe the sun or the moon was out, so it would sort of light up that hall, and I would run my hand along the cool marble. And, there's just something really delicious about that kind of in between time or that quiet time, that I feel
Mhm.
you talking about. And that for me, we've talked in recent days of I'm up very early. I always have been. Not quite as early as I have been in recent years, but as a kid, I usually was up early. But I kind of love that early time of day because it's so quiet and still,
Mm.
and for doing spirit work, it's a great time of day for it because it's so spacious and expansive, the energy, it's so still. So, anyhow,
Mhm.
there's the sameness, right? There's that sameness
Yeah.
of that call within ourselves, within our minds, to the stillness and to the darkness too is also what I hear. There's this whole idea of the intuition and the more feminine so-called qualities of being more mysterious and dark. you know that's my happy place. My happy place is in the dark, not in the way
Mm.
of asleepness, but in the way of the mystery, in the way
Mm.
of like, oh, my logic has a place, but it actually makes me nuts if it's not in service to my intuition. And my intuition is more the unknown, the dark, the mysterious, right? And that we can't really figure it out, right? Spirit has to speak with us in our intuition, and that's not a place of logic, you know. Logic is not our intuition. And so anyway, so that kind of dark,
Mm.
deep down, mysterious sort of part of ourselves that most of us are scared to look at when we first start our spiritual journeys. I'm just hearing that call to speak to that right now. It's the kind of, yeah, it's like deep down in the earth kind of dirtiness that we've tried to vilify, that is vital for our intuition to come to life. We have to face these parts of ourselves that aren't quite so tidy as the logic. I had somebody yesterday call me to talk about some support I was giving, and it's a guy, and he wanted to know some processes for dealing with waking up. And it's not that there aren't processes that can be helpful along the way, but this is kind of a no process. Like awakening is kind of not a process. We might talk about a process or a journey, but it's actually none of those things. It's a different way of being. And
Mm.
so I don't know why that needs to be said right now, but there it is. So we're going to let it up and out. So, is there anything else we want to talk about for today? We've been going for a while here. I've totally enjoyed myself. We had the prayer in our hearts that this be fun, and I got to say, for me, it's been fun. How about you?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it's been fun.
good, good.
Yeah. Well, um, I mean I just enjoy I think a big part of this last year for me has been opening up to just um totally new interpretations
Mm,
of the symbols of the world.
great.
Um, so you had sort of felt that we would come together and kind of look at some symbols that people might be interested in and share our experiences with those and how we experience them. And feels really fun to do that because we've had kind of very different backgrounds and ways to get to now.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for bringing that back to the forefront because, yeah, we had spoken, just to get a little clearer about that message, we had spoken that maybe we would do these once a week, that if people had topics that they were really chewing over, that they needed some clarity on, that maybe we could just be in this kind of conversation to see what the spirit would say. And for me, again, I found the course seemingly in the East West bookstore back in the day when it was a tiny little hole in the wall. I don't think it even exists anymore. It's in New York City. And it like jumped out at me, and I put my hand on it. It was like a red hot fire energetically. It was like, wow, what is going on here? And it quickly took me into a deep dive in my mind, and was a great source of healing and comfort for me. But I was not aware that there were people living in community talking about the Course. I may have been aware there were Course groups, but I didn't ever go to one. The only seeming organized Course in Miracles event kind of experience I had was through Living Miracles. So I didn't have the path that you had, as you say, in terms of the Course being like my spiritual path. That was not the case for me. It was a piece of remembrance for me. It was a piece of confirmation. It was seemingly a way to train my mind in certain respects. But for me, it's yoga and shamanism and Buddhism. And, for me, I've kind of had a broader approach, not because it's good or bad or right or wrong, just because that's been what's been helpful to my mind. And also, I find that because I've had kind of a varied path, Spirit can speak through me to lots of different people because I can kind of relate to the context of the universal message through different lenses. The Course in Miracles says things that are the same as a Peruvian shaman and the same as, a Catholic in the church, or the same as, Lao Tzu might have said about these things. These are universal things we're working out, but the curriculum, as the Course might say, the curriculum might be different for the individual, but it's the curriculum that's the one curriculum. The awakening is the awakening journey, so to speak, but how the Spirit will work with us is unique to us because we all orient a little differently. So I think you're right that it could be rich for people to hear, because we do kind of have a very varied way that we've been taken through our process. And so it would be potentially good contrast, not just for anybody else to listen, but for you and me to kind of enjoy seeing it in a new way. So, yeah. So are we inviting people to give us comments in terms of what they would like to hear? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I would love that.
Yeah. So what kind of topics in this moment feel present for you that might speak to others? Anything come to mind right now? I love the David Hoffmeister no private thoughts kind of thing. That's one of the community things. That's a really deep thing that just popped into my head. Divine Providence, that's a great topic.
I don't really have anything specific that's coming to me. I just always love hearing what other people think about and what they don't understand. Not that I have all the answers, but
Yeah, no, it's helpful for us, for anybody listening. We're not doing these talks as if we're sitting on the holy mountain up above everybody. We're here in our own mind training. We're here in our own awakening. We're here in our own relationship, to be in the channel and to be a communication device for Spirit. And we're in our own fire ceremony here doing this kind of a recording. We're here with a prayer to be shown what's fun, what's helpful, and then to make it useful to other people. So yeah, for me too, to learn how to talk about these things, meaning to be a channel for Spirit, is always a blessing. And then to hear somebody, say, wow, I feel so alone on my journey. Oh, I've been there a million times, right? I know what that's about from my experience, not from some place on high, but just from my seeming experience. And it's good for us all to know we're not alone. It's good for us to know these thoughts are kind of in the mind, that they're not personal to us, that they're universal things we're all working out. So, great. So
and it gets so confusing, so it's nice to maybe offer a little bit of like insight or lightness, that because it gets so confusing and heavy.
Yeah.
It's nice to just be able to offer a little bit of glimmer, maybe there's something, maybe there's another way here.
Totally. And one thing that just came into mind too is like there's so many people talking about the spiritual journey and their awakening journey and deep spiritual truths. There's a vast array of perspectives and all that. And we're not looking to convince anybody of anything, or at least I'm not. And I am not here holding myself out as an authority. I'm just here to share in the moment what feels really present. And if it's helpful to you, great. And if it's not, fantastic. Go find somebody else that has a message for you that resonates for you. And I'm not here to try to convince anybody or argue with anybody about what anything is for or how anything
Yeah.
works. I've had a lifetime of that, and I'm just here to do my best to listen to spirit, to speak for what's in my heart, and to do no harm and to serve the highest good. That's kind of my prayer. Anything from you to close out?
Just, it's been fun.
Yeah.
What a fun new opportunity.
Yes, it has been. Okay, my friend, and to fellow travelers that might listen to this, I'm going to sign off and say, love you much. And maybe we'll do this again. Maybe we won't. How about you? Anything to sign off?
Oh, a big hug to everybody who feels to listen.
Okay. Love you all. Bye for now.
Bye.